empathy is my superpower.
They say that about me too.
I never heard that about you, Emmanuel. I never heard that about you.
You're clearly listening. You're not listening to this podcast.
So
the people have spoken.
Empathy is I care about people. So not every lawyer feels that way. But let's say you have a woman. She comes in and she says, I'm so sick of this. My spouse never does anything for our family. He works all week. Then on Saturdays, he's out watching college football with his buds. And then on Sunday, he's golfing. I'm done. I want a divorce.
Welcome to Stop Whining About Real Estate. Join us as we chat, sip, banter, and wine with the best in the biz. Grab a glass of your favorite vino, sit back, relax, and let's wine together. Hello and welcome to Stop Whining About Real Estate. Today we have a good friend of mine, an industry guru, and someone who's been in this area and world for a lot of years, Tammy Saltzman.
Thank you.
She owns TBS Law. She does family law, divorce law, title attorney, real estate law. So one-stop shop and does it all. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So happy to have you.
Glad to be here.
Do you want to introduce me? No.
Sorry.
Apparently we forgot about me. I'm not important.
I was so excited to have her here. This is obviously my co-host, Emmanuel St. Germain, CEO of Choice Mortgage Group, and also a friend. You can be a friend for today.
Wow, that's very special. Thank you. Very nice to see you, Tammy, as always.
Thank you.
And I'm not buying what Sarah said. I don't think she meant to say it this way, but she said you've been around for a lot of years. I think you look like you just got out of college myself.
Wow, thank you.
Look at him go.
Flattery will get you everywhere.
Yes. I used to come to school with an apple. No, just kidding.
I bet he did.
Tammy, tell us a little bit about your journey in terms of real estate, and there are two applicable things that we'll talk about today. One's going to be the family law and how that's affected in terms of how people buy real estate, and also what happens when they get divorced, and having to refinance, not refinance, things like that. And then obviously we'd love to hear about some of your experiences, and hopefully you've got some really fun stories, about being a real estate attorney and from the title side as well. But so welcome to the show. Thank you for being on with us.
Appreciate it. So I went back to law school later when I was 34. And graduated when I was 37. So I've been practicing law for 25 years now here in Florida. Came out of law school as a family law attorney, wanted to help families. My parents were divorced when I was 9, back when divorce was not even popular. So I really wanted to help families amicably separate as best as I could. And right before I went to law school, because I was going to law school later in life, my advisor had suggested that I work in the legal community before I borrow so much money so late in life to go to law school, which was a very smart suggestion. So I went to work for a local attorney in town who did trust and wills. And then whenever there was someone who passed away, he would help them sell the property. And whenever I got a chance to work on the real estate part of it, I loved it because it was very puzzle-oriented. You had to fill in all the boxes, and you had to balance on both sides, and then you had to balance with the bank. And I just enjoyed the whole process, the puzzle of putting together a deal. And so when I got out of law school, the fund came and knocked on my door and said, hey, you should do title because everyone getting a divorce sells a piece of property. And that's how it all began. So back in the day, before the whole market crash, I owned a company called Paradise Home Title. We were one of the largest title companies in Boca. And when the market crashed in 2008, I shut the company. I took a 1-year sabbatical and then came back into the business. And now it's secure title and escrow.
Very cool. So when you mean the whole balancing back and forth, for those of you who don't know, what she's referring to is getting the buy. So on a settlement statement or on a closing disclosure, which is what we use now, making sure that the buyer's fees and the seller's fees. What happens in our world is from the lending perspective to the title perspective, we go back and forth to make sure that all of our numbers balance. Now, you said the fund. What is the fund?
Okay, the fund is an underwriter.
Okay.
So every title person or title company has a underwriter that writes the policies for title insurance. And so the fund is one, Old Republic Title, Fidelity National Title, Chicago Title. So there's a lot of different title companies out there. The key is to have the cell phone number of the vice president. So when that happens, you know you're with the right title.
So like any company, it's all about relationships.
It's all
and
about
you have great relationships with your underwriters so that when you need to get things done, you can get things done.
Yes, and we have different underwriters for different reasons. You know, the fund actually got me started, so there's some loyalty there, but I mostly am a member so I could be part of the attorney real estate board. You know, so there's different things that you can do with different underwriters. And Chicago we use just for commercial deals.
And so going back to the earlier years, what made you want to go to law school at the age of 34 years old? That's a big game changer, at that stage of your life.
So it's a little off topic, but
we like that.
Yeah, I was single, never been married, and the dream of some prince driving up on that white horse just did not seem realistic. And I wanted to have a financially sound life. My mother struggled because of the divorce from my dad. And I didn't want to struggle financially, and I didn't want to rely on anyone financially. So I felt like I needed to further my education so that I could be financially supportive. And when I was a little girl, I always wanted to be a lawyer or the president of the United States of America.
So you wanted to create a life of independence. So I commend you and I applaud you for that. That's fantastic.
Yes.
So I do want to, you said something about your parents getting divorced at a young age. Were there things in that divorce that you remember and noticed? And is that one of the reasons that you went into family law? Did you apply some of the things you saw into how because when we were speaking before, you talked a little bit more about mediation rather than full-on litigation. And is part of that because of what you noticed or what you felt in your personal family? If I'm prying, of course, you can say, shut up.
I'm pretty open. I'm an open book. So my parents' divorce was not litigious. However, it affected the children and myself and my brothers. First of all, back in 1970 when they got divorced, it wasn't a popular thing. So we were ostracized. You know, we weren't invited to birthday parties anymore. We didn't get to go to do sleepovers. You know, the other kids thought that there was something wrong with our family because of the divorce. So that kind of made me defensive. But my mother never had anything good to say about my father, unfortunately. And my father never said one bad word about my mother. So I use that example a lot in my practice with family law, because all children grow up to be adults and they know the truth. So you can yap all you want.
Right.
Actions always speak louder than words. You could tell your kids not to lie, but if you lie, they will lie.
Yeah. They're always watching and they're going to do as you do, not as you say.
Exactly.
Yep.
And so I came out of wanting to be, to help families. And I think a divorce is a happy occasion. Like, it's the finality of a divorce. Like, first of all, it takes years to want to get divorced.
Yeah.
You may be unhappy for a lot of years and stay with the wrong person. And then when you finally realize you want to get a divorce, it could take years to get that actual final judgment, which is what actually, separates you legally from your spouse. So a lot of times you're separated, where the one person moves out, let's try this. That could go on for 6 months or a year. Then you hire lawyers, you try to come up with a settlement agreement. That could take a while, depending on which lawyers you hire. So there are litigation lawyers, there are collaborative lawyers, there's mediators, there's all different types of personalities. And so at the end, like when the final judgment comes, especially now after COVID, everything's on Zoom. I always tell my client, come to my office. Like, come in my office for the final hearing. So at least I can hug them at the end, you know, like.
That's nice of you.
Like we want to, maybe it won't be a happy occasion. Maybe it will be a sad occasion. But finality is happy.
Yeah.
Because tomorrow the sun will shine.
Yep.
So even if the divorce is not what you wanted and it's a terrible thing, tomorrow's a brand new day. And so I try to, anyone who retains me usually gets essential oil called hope. And I tell them that there's always hope and that no one ever died of a divorce. And I give them a gratitude journal. And I tell them to write down things that they are grateful for about their spouse. So you married him for a reason, right? Or she for a reason. So go back to the first date, like, and look at what it was that you are grateful for. In the end, it didn't work out, but there's so much that was good.
Yeah.
And focus on the good so that you don't come from anger. Gratitude heals you.
Do you represent more men or more women? What percentage would you say it is?
It's 50-50. On
Really?
paternity actions, I represent more men.
Well, that makes sense. From a male perspective, having a female attorney gives you a little bit more of a different perspective, I would think.
I don't know. But
from my perspective, if that wasn't the case. So speaking of my perspective, so someone who's never been married and someone who will want a prenup, let's talk prenups and especially with real estate. So I own, a home, some investment stuff, investment properties, things like that. Talk about a prenup, how does one protect oneself from marital assets?
Great question.
Because I'm very much of the belief that what we do together, you can have half of the interest and all that stuff. I don't mind, but why should I be giving away things that I've had to work for? Because like you, I created a life of independence and worked very hard for my things. Also, I don't think I should have to pay half or split half of things that I acquired prior to the relationship.
So there's a lot of different ways to do a prenup. Mm-hmm. But the most important thing is that each side should be represented by counsel. You should have plenty of months in advance prior to the wedding. Like, you don't want to sign your prenup the night before.
Or spring it on them the month before.
Right. You want to have.
Yes, so have I.
So those get overturned. Those are ripe for
disaster.
I will not help anyone if their marriage is less than 3 months away.
Someone told me that let's say if I had money, then I was hiding money in the Caymans, that something about full transparency or full disclosure, mm-hmm. and that if at the time of divorce, the prenup would become null and void if the other individual was able to prove that I hid information from the full disclosure of my assets.
Divorce too. So if you lie during your divorce, it could be overturned.
Really? Okay.
Mm-hmm. So you could do a motion to set aside a final judgment due to fraud. So
what if I don't know where the assets are? Is there such a thing as plausible deniability?
So if you have somebody that works with you, hide your stuff and not tell you.
Hey,
yeah, you can try. So yeah, you're going to have you're going to go for fraud. You're going to go for duress. You're going to go for incapacity. I was on drugs. Sometimes we sign prenups with a camera, just like we're doing today, mm-hmm. where we're talking and do you know what you're signing? Have you had a chance to read it? Have you had a lawyer review it? Have you taken any drugs today? We ask all those. Are you pregnant? Do you feel pressure to sign this? So we sometimes record, signing of prenups.
Note to self. I like that one.
And
I'm earmarking
some people feel whatever I already have is mine, mm-hmm. but whatever we have together is ours. Some people feel like whatever I had is mine, whatever I get in the future is mine, everything is mine, what's yours is yours, and never the two shall meet. We will have one joint bank account. We're going to each deposit $5,000 a month into that account, and we're going to use that account to pay for all of our expenses. different people have different
strokes, different
levels
folks.
of comfort.
I find it so weird.
Some people put a timeline on theirs. Look, this prenup is valid, but if you
10 years.
right,
And if we
10
make it to
years or
11
25
beyond,
years or 15 years, whatever both of you feel comfortable with, depending on your age, and yes, you can protect property that is in your name. So if you own property prior to a marriage and then you get divorced, that property is non-marital. Let's pretend we have no prenup. That property is a non-marital property because it was purchased prior to the marriage.
oh, so it doesn't need a prenup.
Not necessarily.
And also, what if it's in all my stuff's in a trust?
Okay, so if that property that's in your name only, let's say it's in your name, it's only in your name,
And not
but
in a trust.
you are married and you never had a prenup, but you're using your marital income to pay the taxes
Sure.
and to pay for maintenance on the property, then it would create a marital component. And there is a case that tells you how you divide, how you calculate that marital component, so of the non-marital property. Now, say you're married, no prenup, and you buy a property during your marriage, but you just put your name on it only. You use your income, but you have no prenup. That property is
It's a little
marital.
selfish, by the way, but yeah.
That
But that's
property is marital. Doesn't matter if it's your
But rightly
homestead.
so. I mean,
it's purchased during the marriage, so that property is marital. So one of the biggest questions we get in the real estate world is, my wife is not on the deed and I want to sell our marital home. Does she have to sign? Or why does she have to sign? I don't want her to sign. Or she's out of the country. I don't know where she is and she can't sign. We get that too. So any property that is owned in Florida that has homestead protection on it and you're married, the wife must sign even if the wife is not on the deed. So people say, why? Why does she have to sign? So you have to go back to the Florida Constitution. And in the Florida Constitution, we have something called homestead protection. And in that homestead protection is you are not allowed to alienate your spouse from their primary residence.
Why not?
Neither person.
So if it's an investment
joke, but yeah.
property, different rules.
Yes.
Yes.
Got it.
But it still could be a marital property.
Got it.
But you could
Depending on
still
how things
sell
are
it
paid
without
for.
the spouse.
Got it.
Which is why for us, on our side of the world, in the lending world, we don't recognize the term separated. We only recognize married or
Or divorced.
unmarried. If you are married and you're doing your homestead, we're going to need to know where your spouse is. They're going to have to sign some documents. So we set it up because, of course, we've all been bitten once, and that's how we learn. I've had where someone, a spouse can't be found, and next thing you know, we have a dead deal at the very last second.
Yes.
Dead person.
Or the
A dead
spouse.
person?
I thought you were just- yeah.
Or the spouse.
I have had clients die literally a days before closing. This is a lot years ago. And they're like, Mr. So-and-so passed away. We no longer need this refinance. And I was like, but I need the money. No, I'm just kidding. But maybe back then. But, just in general, it is what it is. That's what happens.
Yes. So a lot of times the wife doesn't understand, why will I need to sign the mortgage? I'm not on the property. But if you're buying a primary residence.
Well, they say I'm not on the loan.
Right.
People don't understand they don't understand the word mortgage in terms of what Tammy is referring to is not what I do in terms
Right.
of providing a mortgage.
Right.
Providing a mortgage is actually creating a note, which is a loan. So the note is my loan. The mortgage for you is...
Okay, so the note is the actual loan and the promise to repay. And so the husband could be on that alone. or the wife could be on that alone, and the other spouse, if it's her homestead or their homestead, she needs to initial the mortgage document, because the mortgage document is the document that gets recorded in the public records, and it lets all the world know that there is a mortgage on this property
And the note is
and
not
that there's
recorded.
a wife.
And the note's not recorded, which is why when you have a mortgage, we can't go look up to see what the terms of your mortgage are. That's confidential.
Got it.
There's an arm that has an addendum, not an addendum. What is it called?
A rider.
A rider. Excuse me. Thank you. So like when you have an adjustment interest like type product, an arm, that has a separate rider that is recorded.
Mm-hmm.
So we can tell when someone has an arm, and you can see what that interest rate is. Whereas on a 30-year fixed mortgage, you cannot.
private.
Yeah.
Right, it's private. So in Florida, there is no such thing as legal separation.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why we don't recognize it here. Homestead protection not only protects a spouse from alienation, it protects a property from anyone foreclosing on the property. So when you have homestead protection, there may be a lien that gets filed against your property, but they can't foreclose on it. Like even the IRS cannot take your homestead away from you. They can file a lien saying that you owe taxes to the IRS.
You can't be sued either, right, for it?
You could.
So let's say if I sell, because this is my example that I give someone, which is one of the reasons that we have properties that have values that are so high here in Florida, is that if you sell a company in New York for $10 million and you come buy a house for $10 million, anybody that wants to go after that company, now the money, no, you cannot. Once it's in your homestead, to Tammy's point, now that money is protected. So you see a lot of people
That's why.
dump a ton of cash into a house. So that's the
However,
Yes.
however, if you are dumping money into a house in an effort to avoid a creditor, that could be an issue. And they could go to court and ask to put aside the homestead protection that's on your property because you're using it maliciously in order to avoid a lien that you knew or
Does that
should have
happen
known
often?
that was coming. I don't see it on my end, but what I do see on my end is affidavits. So the seller has to sign an affidavit stating that he's a U.S. citizen and has a social security number. He is not selling the property to avoid a creditor, that he has not hired anyone who has worked on his property in the last 90 days that he hasn't paid. And a buyer has to sign an affidavit only if they get a mortgage, because the mortgage company wants to be assured that he has no one that's coming after him, that there's no one who could put a claim on the property even in between the sale and the recording of the mortgage, right? And so they do sign affidavits that protect lenders from third parties potentially filing claims. So if you do have a claim against your property, you would have to pay that off when you go to sell your property. They cannot foreclose. The only people who can foreclose on your property are your lender if you don't pay, your HOA if you don't pay, and any mechanic that works on your property that has filed a notice of commencement and then you fail to pay them, they can foreclose with a mechanic's lien.
So just to define that for the lay people, that would be, you're getting a roof, you're getting a landscaping work, you're having a general contractor, anybody who's working on your house type stuff.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly. And so that, is a big part of the whole uncovering exactly what's going on, especially when you're loaning money. You want to know, why are you borrowing the money? Are you married? Where are you going to live? Is this going to be your homestead? Because if it's not their homestead, their interest rates are going to go up.
What's my understanding is that in Florida family law, when two individuals are married and they own property together, is it true? Because I've always said this. Maybe I've been saying it erroneously, but don't you have to attempt to refinance and then I don't know if it's a year or 5 years, or there's something that is, in order to try and get the other person off or whatever it is, off of their title.
So again, a lot of different ways to do it. And what we have been finding most recently is that a lot of the loans during a divorce or due to a divorce are assumable by the other spouse. And why we're finding this out now is because a lot of people have 2 and 3% rates, and they don't want to refinance because they can't maybe afford to stay in the house at 6 or 7%. So what we've been doing for our clients who are going through divorces is reaching out to their lenders with approval.
But that's only a government loan. So like you can't do that on Fannie Freddie. They're not assumable.
I don't have the distinction between what is assumable or not assumable, but
government
during
loans
a
in
divorce,
general, like VA and FHA, usually are.
Yes.
And then from the conventional stuff, my understanding is that there never are. Doesn't mean you can't get permission at some point if somebody owns something that they can do something, but they lose. There's no benefit to keeping something at 3% on the books if the current market is 7%. That's a loss for that institution.
Right, but if that institution can't refinance that person, they could lose the loan altogether because then the property gets sold.
Perfect. Right now there's a ton of equity. Anybody who has a 3% rate means they got it back before we had a 50% increase in our valuations. Mm-hmm. So I mean, I would say it's the reverse. If you owe me $300,000 at 3%, your house is probably worth $500,000. I'm happy to foreclose on that.
Right. Well, they're not foreclosing. They're selling it.
No, I get it. They would sell and share the...
Right. But yes, even conventional loans with certain language in the marital settlement agreement written a certain way, mm-hmm. which states that one spouse will assume the loan and take full responsibility and indemnifies and holds the other spouse completely harmless, and he is no longer responsible for the payment of those loans, then the spouse can use that documentation to take over the mortgage as long as it's current.
So I never knew that. That's news to me.
Does that, just one question on that one. So the person that is no longer responsible for that mortgage, if they were to go apply for a mortgage and a different loan, does that debt of the previous mortgage then...
The lender has to approve.
It's going to show up on that person's credit report, and then they provide them with a copy of the marital settlement agreement, and they see that they're
not responsible for that debt.
Mm-hmm, any longer, so and then it doesn't go against them.
Got it.
And there's certain language that has to be put into that agreement a certain way.
Okay, so what you're doing then is that's not the same thing as what I'm talking about. That's a temporary fix. There are two ways. Right.
There's assumption, and then there's this language.
So the language concept, what you're saying is just like if we buy if I co-sign on a car for you, in our world, if I co-sign on a car for you, mm-hmm. and you make the 12 payments in a row, and we show that you made 12 payments out of your bank account, your money, mm-hmm. it no longer affects me when I go to apply a loan, as long as we prove that. That's what the second part, what it sounded like. In general, though, what most people want is that when they're in the process of getting divorced,
they refinance.
They're worried about the debt staying with them. It could affect your not just that, your credit score. Like if you don't make, if you're married and the spouse, you're on the loan and the spouse is the one supposed to make, because this happens all the time.
They stop making payments.
I literally just met with people the other day. Part of their divorce is that he stopped making the payments. He's like, I'm not going to let you. That spouse was not willing to sell the house while he was making the payments. There was no incentive for her to leave. So he said, screw it. I'm going to stop paying. He goes, I don't care that my credit's going to get messed up. If you're not going to leave, well, to the point where they're about to foreclose, and now there's $300,000 of equity that they're going to lose. So at that point, then the spouse said, okay, sell the house, I'll take my half. It was better than nothing. But until that issue was created until there was something where
Right.
you said, you're going to
Put
get
the
kicked
pressure,
out.
right.
There's no pressure. And, you know, it just makes it a very, now, unfortunately, for this poor gentleman, he's got, you know, again, and I don't mean poor in terms of their relationship. I have no clue what that is and no judgment. But because he stopped making all those payments, he's in a rebuilding process.
Yeah.
So we've got to get him
Right.
back into
That happened to
rebuilding
me.
his credit.
You know, my ex stopped paying the mortgage when we separated, and it took me 6 years to recover from that.
So money is the center of the ugliness in the divorce situation.
And it can be.
Yeah.
You know, depending on the advice that people are given by their attorneys. So attorneys usually want to
fight.
stir things up. Yes.
Let's
You
do
know.
this for years. Yeah.
You know, that some people don't get good advice, and it does cause a lot of litigation.
Yeah.
And it also destroys families.
And big bills. Yeah.
That's why you hit him with a prenup.
Well, sometimes we use postnups to save marriages. So
Ooh.
Wait,
not-
what's a postnut?
yes,
Talk to me
please,
about
go
this
on.
postnut. I've
So
never heard
I like to
this.
think of
Dr. Ruth,
myself,
go on.
whenever I talk about postnups and saving marriages, I feel like, you know, almost like the divorce fairy.
You're just so peaceful about it. You want everybody to feel good regardless of what it is and come out whole and okay.
You don't like winning?
So
It is winning to her.
No,
To
you
me-
you like winning. You want to go for the dagger. I don't know. I hear you to exactly what you just said about being peaceful. I see you much more as a mediator than a litigator. The way
She
you
hates
sound.
litigation. It's the first thing she said to me when we met in Leadership Academy.
You make what?
She hates litigation.
Gotcha.
So, you know, litigation is very confrontational. It's a lot of stress. You lose sleep at night, especially if you care. You know, so I'm a caring attorney. I care about my clients. I care about my reputation. I care about my clients' pocketbooks. I care about what happens in court. So I lose sleep because your life is in my hands. Your future is in my hands, and is very stressful. So I have not litigated in a few years. I have a litigator in my firm that does all our litigation for us, and he's in his 30s, and he doesn't lose sleep at night. So for him, it's
perfect.
better, right? So litigation is very stressful. But you know, I am not a good mediator. You said to me that I see more of a mediator. I like to use mediation as a tool to settle cases. I'm a collaborator and a negotiator. I am looking to solve issues as quickly and as amicably as possible.
You're a problem solver.
I'm a problem solver and a people carer. I have empathy. Empathy is my superpower. You know,
They
so
say that about me too.
I never heard that about you, Emmanuel. I never heard
You're
that
clearly
about
listening. You're not listening to this podcast.
you. So
The
you
people
know,
have spoken.
You know, empathy is I care about people. So not every lawyer feels that way. But let's say you have a woman. She comes in and she says, I'm so sick of this. My spouse never does anything for our family. He works all week. Then on Saturdays, he's out watching college football with his buds. And then on Sunday, he's golfing. I'm done. I want a divorce. So a lot of times I can then give that person a parenting plan. And I can say to them, if you get divorced, this is what it's going to look like. You get Monday, Tuesday, he gets Wednesday, Thursday, you're alternating weekends. Let him know that's what the law is. Or Sunday to Sunday. Could go week to week. Some families go 2 weeks to 2 weeks or month to month. Depends on the kids, depends on the family, depends on their circumstances. I'm getting someone divorced right now who is a captain aboard a vessel that does cargo. He's very rarely here. His time sharing isn't going to be like everybody else's. But a lot of times, if you could write down what the schedule will look like, and that's going to be the schedule regardless, sometimes a spouse will step up because they don't want to get divorced. I have had divorces where someone comes to me and says, I can't stand the children from the first marriage. My husband, all he wants to do is pay for his daughter's babysitters so she could go out to discotheques, and I'm so over it, I want a divorce. I can't take it anymore. Sometimes what we can do is divide up the assets financially.
Bloodline planning. Right?
Right? We could say you get 500,000, he gets 500,000. If he wants to give his 500,000 to his daughter, that's his business, as long as he doesn't touch your 500,000. And sometimes when couples can write down the things that they fight about on a regular basis, and money, sex, and in-laws are the three reasons people get divorced, then if you can resolve those, then you can get back to having fun and being married again.
I mean, one seems fairly easy to fix. And I don't
Which
mean,
part?
not the in-laws, and I don't mean money. I mean, money is money. That's not, depending on what you do for a living, you may or may not be able to make more of it, and I think depending on the pressures and you could be accustomed to a certain life, and then all of a sudden, work isn't going so well, and now you've got that. In-laws is, woof. I mean, you can't fix that. In-laws are your in-laws. But you should have known that day one. No?
Just kidding.
Times change, people change, jobs change, economies change.
I think people change.
Yeah, nobody stays the same. Life is not stagnant. A lot of people are, okay, so we have cases where women have stayed home to have children, and then husbands say, okay, time to go back to work. The kids are in school. Let's go. And the wife's like, I don't want to go back to work. Well, that was the agreement. You said you'd go back to work. I'd let you stay home. We have 3 kids. I know you've been home for 10 years, but it's time to go back to work. And the wife doesn't want to go back to work. She just wants to stay home and order on Shein and Amazon and eat bonbons, so they're getting a divorce. The husband's bored. He doesn't want his wife to stay home. They're fighting. She ends up moving into a second bedroom because he's nagging her. Or you got the other side. The husband gets laid off from a job that he's had for 15 years, and he's had it since college, and he made good money, but the company got sold, and the new people have their own management, and he gets laid off, and now he's laying on the sofa, and he doesn't want to work. And the
So what you're
wife's
saying is I
like,
have it good the way that
This
I
is
have
why
it
you're
right
not
now.
married.
the wife comes home every day after working all day, and the husband is watching the news.
I come
She's
home every day.
pissed.
My house is spotless. My dog has been taken care of.
Yeah.
She's well groomed, obviously well behaved.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of times when you're fighting over in-laws or you're fighting over money, it affects sex.
Absolutely is what I hear.
That was good.
That out.
And in second marriages, it's kids from the first marriage. So
Yeah.
that's why the rates go up, because you still have in-laws, you still have sex, you still have money, and now you're adding kids from the first marriage. And exes.
And exes.
Yes.
Do you
Yeah.
know that the numbers actually suggest that arranged marriages
Oh,
have
wow.
a higher, check, Google
This is
it.
where we're going with this.
Arranged marriages have a higher success rate than normal, like whatever we would have.
When you say arranged, like,
Well,
like
there's many cultures, Indian
profile.
cultures, there's many cultures in the world where arranged marriages still happen.
Well, I hear that people are meeting people on dating websites and marrying them. And I'm thinking, who are you meeting? And are you kidding me? I would, no. Just
You never
no.
been on a dating website?
I have 20 years ago, before I was married, 25 years ago. And now that I'm divorced, I went back onto these websites and the same guys are there. Thank you. No, I'm not on them. It's not my thing.
It's a unique challenge because I being on there and being single, well, here's what I would tell you. I would say that in one aspect, I would much rather meet somebody in person naturally. That being said, I'm an executive in a company and I work a lot of hours. It's not necessarily that easy. By the time I go home, I have to pick and choose my time, my free time between what I want to do. And so it is a little harder to meet people. Sarah is out there doing the networking. So from our roles, it's not like I'm going to all the real estate events and meeting lots of
Right.
people. I'm stuck hibernating. They barely let
I'm
me out of
going
the
to all the
office.
real estate events and I'm not meeting anyone. So you're not missing anything.
Fair enough, but you get my point. And so sometimes, although what I've found is that it's just a unique, not everybody's ready or not everybody wants something. And timing is just so difficult in the
It's,
single world.
to
What do you
me-
want? Where are you
Yeah.
at in your
Well, I also think
headspace?
motives are very different, right? So I think, everybody has their checklist of what they want or what their goals are of what they want out of it. And I think your goals, and when you see somebody that is pretty and you like her personality from what it says and her her questions and answers, and you're thinking, all right, this aligns with what I like.
I like her personality, the way she looks. Is that where you're going?
But hers might be different. What she's looking for might be totally different. So you get on this date together and you hang out and you're going, I mean, it seemed like a good idea, but now here we are, and I don't know that we have much in common, or she really,
I think it's a vibe.
And I have zero drama, Tammy. Like, there's no drama in my life whatsoever.
I
And
There's
think
really
it's
not.
a vibe that you feel with someone, and I don't think you can get that vibe on the internet. I just don't.
Correct.
I think like
the key-
you could be in Trader Joe's and like look up and just feel this vibe with someone, or you could be in a parking lot. I was in a parking lot. I went to a real estate event and they were playing pickleball, and I left early and I was in
you
the
play
park. I
pickleball?
don't. I just went to observe. No, and I went to say goodbye and I walked out by myself and I was walking to my car. And while I was walking to my car, I got on the phone and was ordering a birthday cake from Carvel for my son. And this guy followed me out, and he was handsome, and he said hello to me, and I turned around and I was like,
I gotta go.
No, I was like placing my order, So,
so when
it's
I
a
try
vibe.
that, I get maced, though.
Wait, so
I don't,
did
I
you
don't,
talk
I don't
to
know
him?
why it's
No.
different.
You didn't talk to him?
Sarah, I had such a good joke, and you missed it.
Sorry.
No, I didn't talk to him.
I said when I try that, I get maced. No, but
Well, he wasn't like behind me. He
I'm
was
just
like,
teasing.
he was
Emmanuel
at
gets
least-
in real close, and they turn around, they're like,
Oh, yeah.
hi. Told you I'd find you.
Okay, let's
here.
get back to real estate.
All right, so let's talk real estate. So tell us some stories about, I don't know, just you've been doing this a long time, as have I, and there's got to be a few stories that are
Just this week, you
Sure.
want to know?
yeah, whatever you got.
Okay, so we have
Entertain us, Tammy.
Okay, we have a file in the office that came in on Monday, and a Tuesday morning we got a phone call that the guy died, the seller.
Wow.
And so now we have to do probate. So that was this week. We got a file in that got a 40-year listing agreement from MV Realty, which I understand has
they just,
tons of lawsuits against them, but they have not been. So there's a judgment against them that says they can no longer offer these 40-year term listing agreements, but they are not dismissing the ones that they've already
are in place.
are already in place. So the file that came in, the seller has a realtor and the buyer has a realtor, and now there's this third realtor that has this 40-year list. So that happened this week. Let me think. What else interesting happened this
So
week?
that whole play, because I know the people involved with that company, and that whole play was essentially what they were doing is they would reach out to a homeowner like yourself and say, hey, we'll give you, let's say if your house is $500,000, which on a 3% listing would be $15,000. We'll give you $5,000 today.
$1,500 was the max that they gave out.
Oh, okay. So we'll give you $1,500 today, so you get cash. All you got to do is list the property with us when you sell. But to Tammy's point, you're signing a contract that's obliging you with that person for 40 years. I didn't realize it was 40 years.
That's
But
Well, that's
insane.
I think that's what the Florida statute provides when there's no expiration date and no way to cancel.
gotcha. So the whole point was, right. So the
And
concept
it's
is
older people.
it's a con job
Of
in
course
the
it
sense
is.
that people who aren't necessarily interested in selling are taking the money now, and then
saying,
all of a sudden your house is
eventually
worth
when I do it,
50%.
fine.
2 years from now, you want it, right?
We have another
It's a dangerous play.
We have another file in our office on a divorce matter where the husband is agreeing to let the wife have the marital residence, and we find out that there's a $90,000 HELOC on the property in addition to a mortgage. And when we asked what was the money spent on, nobody seems to know.
So the HELOC, so even on a primary residence, the HELOC, unlike a first mortgage, does not require both spouses to
Apparently.
sign, correct?
No, both parties must sign. She did sign for the HELOC.
She just didn't know that the money had been spent.
Right. So it was just like a
Ooh.
line of credit that they had in case of an emergency.
You use it for
and then
business,
there's a
gambling,
we don't know. So
side girlfriend.
We We just sent a subpoena to the bank to get copies of all withdrawals or all checks
Oh, it's going to
written.
get so interesting.
So that's this week.
Can't wait to hear about last week.
So there's never a dull moment. We've had squatters in the properties where they are people who just break in to an abandoned house, set up shop, and then don't leave. And they could even put utilities into their name where they have electric and water that's in their name when they don't even own the property.
Don't you have to show some sort
They
of...
say they're renting. They're renting.
Wow.
They're renting.
So why aren't we tougher on squatters' rules?
They are. They just changed the rules, and they are much tougher on squatters. It's much easier now to do evictions than it was before.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ron.
So, right now, the hottest topic is, the NAR settlement, everything changing on August 17th, and the buyer-broker agreements, and that's been a very hot topic. We've had a lot of issues where, the sellers are refusing to pay any commissions, and the buyer has to pay their own commission, and a lot of deals are falling apart because of this.
Really? Mm-hmm. Wow. I'm surprised. I mean, you have contracts on both sides. You have a listing agreement that said exactly what it was. And the buyers, if I'm a buyer and the buyer's agent didn't find out what was the cooperating fee or from the other agent, that's on them.
Yeah. They found out, but the deals are falling apart. So, they can't borrow the money. They can't come up with the money. So we're gonna.
Tammy, call us when those deals fall apart. Mm-hmm. I'm very creative at saving those types of deals.
Okay, we'll do definitely.
Yes, we'll use some financing strategies. As
Well,
long as they're not
buyers
cash
are
deals.
funding all commissions anyway because it's the proceeds to purchase the house that is paying all the bills and all of the costs associated with the purchase. And all of the appraisals that are here include those commissions. Mm-hmm. So there's got to be a concession one way or the other. And I think that's where we have to figure out either the concessions have to come from the current appraisals, the appraisals need to come down to account to take out the commissions, which is going to lower the values of the properties. I'm not really sure how it's all going to fall out, but I guess we'll see in the next few months.
Yeah, where I think the largest challenge for a realtor is going to be, and I think this is where some of them are extremely prepared, and I've sat on some broker meetings and that are really fantastic, and they have their teams really where they need to be, and then there are others who've got their head in the sand.
Denial.
And I think what an agent is going to go through for the very first time in most of their careers is that you are going to be similar to a commodity. I don't feel what I do is at all a commodity, but I can be treated like I'm a commodity, right? A real estate agent in the past has used the following format. I'm going to introduce you to 1, 2, 3 lenders. Here you go, take your pick. Well, now imagine if I do the same thing, because in order for an agent to work with someone, they now have to close them on their transaction and their fee up front before they send them any before they are able to see any properties. So what that does is
shopping.
You're a buyer, right? For the first time ever, realtor buying agents are going to be shopped.
Shopping.
They're going to be shopped. The buyer, Sarah, the buyer is going to interview more than one. And when you interview, it's natural, just like if you were the person buying and you're interviewing me and 2 other loan officers, it's not, our credentials are important, yes, but what's coming up? Closing costs and interest rate, right? So the same thing is going to happen, maybe not August 17th on day one, but as the public becomes more and more aware of what the process is and how it works. So I think what agents really need to get a really good grasp on is, who am I? What's my value add? How am I going to help you today? And here is why I'm the best person to get you what you want to go, to achieve home ownership, and et cetera, and my negotiating skills, et cetera. But all of these individuals, and think about it, let's say if you're a realtor, you've been in business 6 months to a year, that's a hard sell. Right? What do you, for you and I've been doing this 20 years. Go ahead. Ask me any questions you want against lending. I'll show you in 2 seconds that I know what I'm doing, just like I can ask you a question, and it's very simple.
But we get jaded. And we may not realize that we're jaded, but we are. I've been doing this 25 years. I am definitely jaded.
I'm not jaded because I'm empathetic.
I'm empathetic, too, to people, but
I'm teasing.
Jaded to the industry as a whole. You may not be so younger people who are only in the business 6 months or a year. I think they have enthusiasm. I think they have a lot of time on their hands. I think that they have more reason to try hard.
And that's okay, but that's what they need to make their sales pitch.
Of course.
Right? And I think that they need to identify that up front and say, hey, Tammy, I want to introduce myself. My name's Emmanuel. I've been in the industry for 6 months.
It's going to be more
I think if you hide it,
as the highlight,
I have more time than any other agent. Your deal means
all Saturdays,
more.
all Sundays.
Right. You got to spin it.
Right.
You have to spin it. What makes me different than every title attorney out there? It's not the red hair. It's I'm available 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 7 days a week. People know me. They know I'm the attorney on speed dial. If you're out with a client on a Saturday morning and they have a legal question, call me. How good is that going to make you look that I take your call? And if I don't take your call, I call you right back. So that's what makes me stand out. And last week, we had one of the other attorneys want to be the attorney on speed dial.
Oh, no.
And Danielle from my office said, wait a minute, you're not the attorney on speed dial. That's
Tammy's
Tammy.
line.
Mm-hmm.
But the guy who followed you to your car, he doesn't mind that you're picking up the phone so late on a Saturday night?
I never got that far with that guy.
Such a shame.
His loss.
I was like, what was I thinking? I should have waited till I got into the car to call Carvel.
I should have hung up on Carvel.
Oh, yeah, no, I would never hang up on Carvel. They're on speed dial.
What do you have for advice for wow, we can go so many different. You have such an experience in this industry, which is great. But so let's kind of segment it. Let's start more in terms of let's go to put your family law hat on first.
Okay.
And let's give advice to which we work with a lot of couples that are newlywed or very early on into their relationships. What are some advice you'd give to somebody buying their first home as a couple? How should they take title, by the way? That's a question that a lot of people ask me that, and I'm like, I'm not your title attorney.
Okay.
I have ideas, but,
So you can take title as one person, okay? Like, say, Tammy Saltzman, a single person. You could take it as Tammy Saltzman, a married person. When you're married and you put your name with your spouse and you have husband and wife, it is automatically in the state of Florida assumed that you are owning these properties as tenants by the entireties. And what that means is you each own 100% of the property. So you don't own half each, you each own 100%. So if anything happens to you, it goes
spouse
to your
A
spouse.
dies, spouse B, we don't have to go through probate, or we do have to go through probate?
No probate.
Okay.
No probate. It goes automatically to the spouse that is surviving. Okay. Now, if you own the property as tenants in common, so the first
Sarah
one,
and I buy an investment property together?
you own it. You and Sarah, you buy a property, you each own it. You say tenants in common. That means she owns half, you own half. When you die, it goes to your estate. When she dies, it goes to her estate. Probate.
I never get his half.
No, not unless you're in his
Nice
will.
try.
Well, I am.
If you're in his will, then it would go to you. How we avoid probate is we say that you two own a piece of property. You're owning it as tenants in common. And when Sarah dies, it's going to her two children. And when you die, it's going to your aunt. And so it's already there. That's called a ladybird deed. Now, the difference between an estate deed and a ladybird deed would be that one is the ladybird deed gives you the power to change your mind whenever you want. And you don't have to get
Good for us single people.
Right. It does. You don't have to get your aunt's permission, okay? It's also good for Sarah. What if her daughter marries someone she doesn't like and she doesn't want her daughter to have the property?
Better not do that, Julia.
Right. So you cannot leave property to minors, It would have to be in a trust, and a trustee would have to be of age to take care of the minors.
Got it.
So there's lots of different ways. Sometimes you hold the property into an LLC and then you have a partnership agreement. Sometimes you put it into a family trust. So how you hold property is important, and then how you change property once you own it is important, because we all know that there is a paragraph, I think it's 16 or 15, in your mortgage that says you cannot make any changes to your deed without written permission from your lender. Otherwise, they could accelerate the loan. So I try to encourage people that if they're going to do any kind of quick claim deed, add someone on, take someone off, that they should check with their lender.
And I would answer as a lender that typically what happens is a lender's never going to know what you do until
It goes into foreclosure.
Until once you stop making payments. When you pay on time, you can get away with a lot of things that, whether it's right or wrong. When you stop making payments, that's when they go backwards and they look at absolutely everything that led to the foreclosure
Mortgage
process.
police come get you.
And then what they're looking, because they're looking for, it's about accountability at that point. It's about finger pointing so that they can recoup all of their attorney costs for the foreclosure process, et cetera.
So going back to the married couple, giving them advice, I would give them advice that they should get life insurance to cover their mortgage. I think that's important. So in case an emergency happens, someone does pass away, someone's in a car accident, that other spouse will have enough money to pay off the mortgage and not have to worry about moving. So I would recommend that.
It's a good one.
Yeah, you can also put the house into a trust. It further protects it from creditors, and that's a good thing to do as
Do
well.
you have a trust?
I don't, but after this episode, I've got some phone calls to make.
Yeah.
Tammy.
No, it's good. I have a
No,
trust.
no.
All my stuff's in a trust, and I did the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I refinance, so because I follow the rules, when I refinance to get my sub 3% rate, I put the house in the trust at that time.
Yeah. So you want to be careful about, moving property around after you're married. Putting into a trust is fine. But if you say you're going, so there's exceptions to the rules, but sometimes you have to pay doc stamps on outstanding mortgage amounts, even when you're doing quick claim deeds. I've heard recently that the property appraiser is reassessing properties when they see a quick claim deed. That was never the case before. So that could really affect.
Even on a homestead property?
Yes, even on a homestead property.
Okay.
So they may reassess it.
So what she's referring to is your property taxes, and the what you pay for a home has nothing to do with what the tax bill is going to be. It's based on what the county appraiser assesses the home, and then we have certain things that we call credits. Homestead being one of them. There are some for disabilities, and there are
veterans.
And veterans, yeah.
And so those give you discounts off of your taxes. And another thing that the homestead protection does is it caps the taxes at 3% increases per year.
Right. So that's
That I'm
actually
aware of.
no, which is great, but it's actually one of the big issues. And although I applauded my boy Ron a minute ago, this is where I think that there's a major opportunity for them to do something about housing. Part of the problem is that, for example, any of us who bought prior to the COVID expansion or valuation increases that we had, our property taxes, if homesteaded, are all low. And your house probably doubled in value depending on when you bought. But it becomes so expensive, should you leave, not only are prices now elevated so you're paying a higher price, not only is the new house going to have a much higher tax bill than what you have. Insurance is higher. Interest rates are higher.
Title insurance is higher.
Everything makes it harder to leave. Like, we have zero incentive other than life changes to leave where we are and to upgrade to do something else. And I think that if they want to stimulate housing economy, which we would love to do, so Ron, please call me. But if they would come up with some sort of strategy, my tax bill is like $10,000 on my property. For what I would want to buy, it's going to go up to $30,000, $40,000, and I'm not willing to do that. Like, that's insane.
And your rate's going to go up.
Well, and I'm paying more for the mortgage. I'm paying for everything, So, whereas
I'm in the same situation. I'm one of the people that bought a house It's worth double what it was worth. My taxes are low. My interest rate is 2.75. You know, where am I going?
Nowhere.
Yeah, it's tough. Yeah. Okay, so that was on the advice on the family law. Anything as a real estate attorney, as we start to wrap up, what is it that you would give for advice on from that perspective? So maybe not a couple, but maybe
An
it's
agent.
What's up?
An agent.
Sure, wherever you want.
What do you mean? What kind of advice would I give to an agent about what?
Good point. That was a bad question.
I mean, there's lots of things I would say to agents, but, you know,
What's something that you would say to an agent going into the second part of this year with the NAR stuff happening? Everybody's a little bit freaked out. Newer agent, older agent, more experienced agent. If you were in their shoes, what, you know, knowing how you've been through all of the things and all of your experience, what would you say to them to kind of put them at ease?
There's only one you.
Okay.
You have no competition.
Okay.
And life is about change. So you have to be able to dance. I always say, dance, do the cha-cha. 1 step forward, 2 steps backwards. 2 steps forward, 1 step backward. Whatever it is, life is about adjusting to change.
So roll with it.
And roll with it and be the best. Educate yourself. Take broker buyer classes. Learn how to sell your value, how to sell your worth. Like I said, you go to a marketing madness on a Tuesday morning, there's 10 title people in the room.
Yeah.
There's only one Tammy. So they're not my competition.
So figure out what that is and go with it.
And know that whoever is supposed to come to me will come to me, because that is who I'm supposed to be doing business with. I don't have to try so hard. I don't have to sell myself so hard. I just have to be me. And there are people that come to me after the meeting and say, can I grab your card?
Because they want you.
Because they want me.
Yeah, that's a good advice.
And that would be, I would say, you know, knowledge is power. So understand the new forms. Understand how to sell your self-worth. And know that you have no competition. There may be 10 title companies, but only one Tammy. There may be 43,000 realtors in Palm Beach County alone, but only one is you.
Yeah.
And you have no competition.
This time next year, 43,000 goes down to?
I don't have a prediction. I really don't. I think that in almost every state in the country, they use buyer broker agreements. So I don't really understand the whole hype on it and why everyone is so up in the air. I am an attorney. I do not represent anyone unless they sign a retainer agreement.
But you've been doing that your entire career.
That's correct.
And just like I
and
have
negotiating
to answer,
my prices, you know.
Just like I have to start off with the question that says, what is your interest rates? That's a great question. Tell me, and we have to answer to that. But this is an entire industry, 43,000 agents in one county alone who have never done that.
So out of the 43,000, how many do you think are actually full-time, active realtors?
Well, I think you have to, first of all, you have to define what full-time means in the real estate world. But I think I would say, I would challenge the question, and I would ask the question with a different question, which is, how many of those 43,000 did at least 1 or 2 transactions?
In a year.
In that calendar year. And so I think what you're going to see is, you think most?
Did not.
Did not.
Correct.
So I don't know what the number is, but my guess, which is why I think you're going to see a significant drop off this time next year, is so many of them are not going to renew knowing they have to learn all these different things. People, unfortunately, are just not up to the challenge of wanting to grow, wanting to get better.
So you know what that means, right? There's going to be less lenders. There's going to be
there
less
already
title
are less
people.
lenders.
You know, they're closing. I just ran an ad for a processor, loan officer after loan officer. They're all applying to be in the title business now. So, even though they may know what a title commitment is, they don't know the title business.
Right.
So I would not be interviewing them. But, it's hard. It's and when the market contracts, cream always rises, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just one simple request for those agents that are planning on doing that. Please file unemployment so the unemployment numbers go up, so interest rates go down for the rest of us. That would be great. We'd greatly appreciate that. You gotta think macro, Tammy. You know, like
Well,
they
it's
have
an
to stop
election
being
year,
so selfish.
like we can,
if
talk
they're not going to
politics.
cut it,
No,
if
we
they're
should
not going
not
to
do
make
that at
it,
all. I don't think that's a good idea.
politics. I love politics.
I know you do.
Yeah, that's good.
There's that empathy.
So isn't an hour gone by already?
Doesn't
you
it go
believe it?
fast?
It does. It goes fast. Boy, oh
Tammy,
boy.
I have one quick question before we wrap up. If
Okay.
somebody was looking for family law, divorce law, real estate law, title services, what is the very best way to get a hold of you from 9 to 9?
Oh, on my cell phone. My cell phone is 561-706-8704.
Like
That is how to reach me personally. If you want to call the office, it's 561-221-0577.
Why call the office if you just handed out your cell?
Anyone can call my cell.
and that man in the parking lot, if you're listening.
If you're listening,
She apologizes.
She'd
She
love
has
to
a
have
cake.
a conversation with you, and she'll share the chocolate crunchies on the Carvel cake.
Yeah, Carvel's the frozen one.
Yes.
Yes, it's ice cream cake.
I don't know this stuff.
Ice cream cake with the chocolate crunchies in the between. It's the only
no one
reason-
ever got you a Carvel cake for your birthday? I'm bringing you
Can you
one.
imagine?
Okay, when's your
They
birthday?
always forget my birthday
When?
every year.
When?
Because it's the day before mine, so they're all looking forward to
No,
celebrating me.
It's actually it's September 18th, which is a Wednesday, which means we'll be recording. You know what we'll do?
Huh?
I have an idea. We'll have my mom on. That would be a good one.
I was supposed to go out of town that week. I will actually go out of town the next day.
I will bring you a cake. So,
Just so I
Carvel
can
with
see your
extra
mom.
crunchies.
Yeah, maybe that would be funny. Mom can embarrass me.
That would be
I will
fun.
absolutely be here for that.
The roasting of
Me too.
Emmanuel.
Yeah.
The-
We're going to have a party.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for coming. We greatly
Thank
appreciate
you. Thank you so
and-
much for having
Tammy,
me.
I loved having you.
Thank you. I love being here with you guys. It's been great. Anytime I get to be with you is fun.
Aw.
Okay, that's enough whining for one day. We are so happy that you could join us today on Stop Whining About Real Estate. So please, not only listen, but subscribe, follow us, download, share, and if you're feeling it, give us a 5-star review. Hey, and if you'd like to be a guest on the show, please email stopwhining@choicemortgage.com. Thanks so much.